Hello, and welcome back to J. Kerner for Astrology. We're here to talk about the second new moon in Aries, the new moon on April 20th at 12:12 a.m. Eastern Standard Time at 29 degrees of Aries. Now, this new moon comes packing a punch because it brings a solar eclipse with it. What's a solar eclipse? Solar eclipses actually only occur during new moons because they provide an opportunity where the moon and sun are in alignment, allowing the moon to block or eclipse the light of the sun. Solar eclipses are rare and powerful, and you'll feel this much more significantly than you felt the previous new moon at 0 degrees of Aries on March 21st. It's a particularly rare solar eclipse in that it's a hybrid solar eclipse, which is when the moon in its orbit is furthest from the Earth, creating a small band on the Earth from which there will be a total eclipse. This will mostly be southeastern Asia, parts of the southern hemisphere, Australia, etc. Hybrid solar eclipse is rare. It only makes up 3 to 5% of all solar eclipses. Most of us not in the southern hemisphere or in Southeast Asia or Australia, we will see an annual solar eclipse, which is where the moon blocks the sun and there's a ring of fire around it, or a partial solar eclipse. Remember, with solar eclipses, even if you can't see it from wherever you are on Earth, you'll still be able to feel it. This solar eclipse is coming full circle to the intentions we set at the astrological new year at the new moon at 0 degrees of Aries on March 21st. You may have also had something pop up around the time of the full moon as a little bit of a reminder or a potential pivot point for those intentions. Now is a great opportunity to revisit those intentions again and apply anything learned under the last full moon to adjust accordingly. This new moon solar eclipse at 29 degrees of Aries is a major wake-up call. For one, we have 2 new moons in the sign of Aries. That's basically the universe saying, hey, look at me, pay attention here. We had one at 0 degrees and one at 29 degrees. Both are considered critical degree points in astrology. Specifically, that 29th degree point, the exact point where an Aries becomes a Taurus, where one sign becomes the next, carries an energy of transformation and change with it, similar to Pluto. And this new moon solar eclipse will be kick-starting what we've been waiting for with Pluto at 0 degrees of Aquarius. It'll be like the spark that ignites what's been sitting, building, and waiting. Pluto will be square the nodal axis, the axis of fate and destiny, for the next few months. This solar eclipse, the moon and sun are aligned with the north node, one of those points of destiny, in square to Pluto. We also have this building toward an opposition as Mars approaches Leo, which will mean our deliverers of karma will be working at odds against one another. Overall theme for this new moon solar eclipse at 29 degrees of Aries, we're shifting from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. It's introducing us not only for how to be, but how to manifest what we want moving forward and how to work with this energy we're shifting into. The most important question you can ask yourself right now is, what change am I being called to make? All right, let's break it down. So beginning with the sun, our collective soul's expression, and the moon, our emotional and intuitive nature, being in alignment within Aries at that 29th degree, that critical energetic degree that carries with it the transformation and power of Pluto. Those two will be shifting together. And while they meet for this new moon, within minutes, they transition together into Taurus. So we'll be shifting from a more masculine Aries or Yang, pursuing, chasing, go-getter energy into a more receptive or feminine or attracting or receiving Yin energy, like Venus and Taurus. We'll be releasing or shedding any shadow of the Aries, any my way of the highway, any arrogance, any lack of negotiating or working together, and making way for more peace and harmony, which is what Venus and the signs that she rules, Taurus and Libra, are all about. Also in Aries, in the background, moving out of conjunction, we have Chiron at 16 degrees and Jupiter at 23 degrees. Jupiter is still in conjunction and will also be eclipsed by the moon here. This is a reminder that Jupiter has your back. Jupiter is in the background while it's expanding. It is leading to growth, wisdom, and most importantly, healing. While Jupiter is in Aries for a couple more weeks, it's asking us to remain open to new ways of being, to taking new directions, to leading with authenticity or leading by example, perhaps being the change you wish to see, and by taking more ownership and accountability in one's own life and one's own healing and hero's journey. Since we are coming out of conjunction with Chiron and leaving Chiron behind us, our deepest inner soul wounds, we are healing that shadow of Aries, any need to chase, any need to pursue or prove, or especially prove our independence or our self-sufficiency. We're leaving all that behind us and creating space for working with others, especially in harmony. We're also learning to trust our intuition and our creativity, and what feeding those two things, what abundance that can lead to and attract. We mentioned that this new moon was a revisit to the previous new moon at 0 degrees of Aries on 3/21. We also want to mention that the number 21 and the 21st degree has to do with growth and healing. It's significant that our first new moon at 0 degrees of Aries was on the 21st of March, while the revisit happens just a couple of days after Jupiter and the Sun align at precisely 21 degrees of Aries. For confirmation, even if you're not consciously aware of the healing on a surface or in your face level, it's happening behind the scenes. Trust and have faith. This new moon solar eclipse is happening in conjunction with our north node of destiny and fated events at 4 degrees of Taurus, which has us very much focused on our resources, our own resourcefulness, and how having those resources connects to our feelings of self-worth and self-confidence. Remember, liberty is found when you find what truly brings you joy. This new moon solar eclipse is happening almost within conjunction of Mercury and Uranus in Taurus. So Mercury in Taurus, where it has been since April 3rd, comes up to the 15th degree point, exactly halfway through Taurus at this new moon, and then the very next day begins its official retrograde period. It's actually been in pre-retrograde period for a little bit now, but it's officially in retrograde from April 21st, the day after this new moon, until May 15th. It'll remain in Taurus until the beginning of June 11th. So this is 2 long months where we will be, our conscious logical minds, Mercury, will be directly focused on what we love and value, which is ruled by Venus, and Venus rules Taurus. We also, since we have Mercury in the sign of Taurus and Venus in the sign of Gemini is ruled by Mercury, they've traded rulers. This is considered mutual reception. So the two, Mercury and Venus, will be working in cahoots. They'll be working arm in arm together, forcing us over the next 2 months to really focus on what we love and value, what we do for work to earn money and fill our cups, and if that's aligned with authenticity and our true authentic soul purpose. We'll also be called to ask if our relationships, Venus has a lot to do with relationships, and that can be relationships to people, it can be relationships to substances, it can be relationships to habits and behaviors. We'll be really called to shed anything toxic that no longer serves and only keep what is aligned with authenticity. Shedding what no longer serves only invites and creates space so that we can attract what is meant for us and more abundance. With the North Node, Mercury, and Uranus, our planet of revolution and change, all in Taurus, there may be a sudden event, especially something affecting our resources, be them our natural resources or our food, our money, perhaps our economy or the banks, around this solar eclipse. Uranus and Mercury don't actually meet until after the next full moon, which is on May 5th and has a lunar eclipse with it. Eclipses always come in pairs. This energy is starting around April 20th, but it'll be a cascade of events, essentially, taking our focus through May and June. So Uranus, like the zodiacal sign it represents and rules, Aquarius, defies the status quo. It's meant to be on the outside looking in so that it can tell you precisely what is wrong with said status quo. If there was nobody on the outside looking in, we would only have one perspective. So it's thanks to Uranus, and it's thanks to people with strong Aquarian energy who offer these unique and different and varying perspectives. When I say that this planet is the planet of revolution and change, it essentially throws us curveballs in the life area of whatever sign and house it's in your chart that ultimately teach us detachment and remind us that change is the only constant. This frees us from any stagnation and ultimately realigns us with our authentic purpose. So in this case, with the North Node, Mercury, and Uranus all in the sign of Taurus, we are setting ourselves free. We're setting ourselves free of conventional paradigms and traditions that don't serve us in the future, of limiting thought patterns, habits, and behaviors that directly affect our abundance and our ability to attract it, our ability to not only give but receive love. We're setting ourselves free of any relationships or work that isn't aligned with our authentic soul purpose. Solar eclipse at 29 degrees of Aries is aligned with the North Node, our fated destined events at 4 degrees of Taurus, which is forming a challenging, opposing, conflicting 90-degree square to Pluto, which has been hanging out at 0 degrees of Aquarius since March 23rd. This tension will increase and build in intensity as we move into late April through May, June, peaking in June and July. We have Pluto retrograde coming up on the horizon on May 1st at 0 degrees of Aquarius, and by June 11th, it'll be at 29 degrees of Capricorn again, that 29th critical anaretic degree point. I would write down those dates. This will be ultimately challenging us to reconnect with divine source and our higher consciousness. We'll be watching the collapse of the old, the shadow side of Capricorn, possibly even some of the shadow of Aquarius may start to emerge with the misuse of data and things like social media for manipulation. We'll be forced to adapt new ways of being, releasing older paradigms of the past that don't fit our future mold. We'll be releasing toxic people, habits, behaviors, substances, relationships, workplaces, fill in the blank. We'll also be learning to see everyone as an extension of our family. We'll learn how to hold space, have empathy and compassion for those who are outside of our familial unit, without getting overly invested, attached, or become enabling. So speaking of enabling, here is a timeline and recent recap of recent astrological history for March. So beginning with March 16th, Venus was in Taurus. That was from March 16th to April 11th. Venus is now in Gemini, answering to Mercury, but pause. We then had our first new moon at 0 degrees on March 21st, bringing in the astrological new year and vernal or spring equinox here in the northern hemisphere. Just 2 days later, on March 23rd, Pluto entered the 0th degree of Aquarius for the first time in some 265 years. This is significant because it is answering to Uranus in Taurus and Saturn in Pisces, where while it was in Capricorn, it was reporting only to Saturn, which at the time was in Aquarius. Additional 2 days after that, we had Mars enter Cancer, our motivation and drive, answering to the ever-changing moon until May 20th. This also means that all Mars-ruled signs, Aries and Scorpio, and anything in those signs is also answering to the moon and the moon's ever-changing sign and phase. Then we had an alignment of Uranus and Venus in Taurus, both answering to Venus and Taurus at the time. We began the month of April with Mercury switching from Aries into Taurus for a 2-month-long stay through Taurus, reflecting on resources, what we love and value, what we do for work to build our self-esteem and our own cup, along with our security, our resourcefulness, and what we're able to provide for our home and family. Just a few days later, we had the full moon at 16 degrees of Libra on April 6th at 12:34 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Then On April 11th, we had Venus enter the sign of Gemini, where it would typically answer to Mercury, but since Mercury is in Taurus, the two have traded rulers. So their mutual reception, as long as Venus is in Gemini, which will be until May 7th. On May 7th, Venus will travel onward into Cancer, where it will join Mars in answering to the moon. Then we have the topic of today's video, April 20th, 12:12 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, the new moon solar eclipse at 29 degrees of Aries, ushering us into Taurus season. Very next day, we wake up to a Mercury retrograde through the sign of Taurus. On April 27th, we have our first quarter moon in Leo. That's just after some of those harsh squares between Pluto, the North Node, and the solar eclipse. And that means that it'll be in a waxing phase, in a challenging position to the sun, motivating us and inspiring us through friction and tension, helping us to get some things done. Leo is a sign that's all about the self-concept of self, self-expression, creative self-expression, and heart-centered leadership. And we do have a few things coming on the horizon, a Venus retrograde through the sign of Leo this summer, among one of them, to reflect on what these themes mean to us as individuals in relationship to others and in relationship to the work that we do, what we love and value, and how we invest the most time and energy. We begin the month of May with a Pluto retrograde through 0 degrees of Aquarius from May 1st to June 11th, and then entering that critical 29th anaretic degree of Capricorn from June 11th, traveling through 27 degrees of Capricorn by August 3rd. Which then brings us to the topic of the next major video, our full moon lunar eclipse at 1:34 p.m., Cinco de Mayo, May 5th, 1:34 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The spotlight for that full moon will be on both Scorpio, where the South Node is, and opposite in Taurus, where we will still have Mercury, Uranus, and the North Node, along with the Sun. At that time, Jupiter will be preparing to enter Taurus for its next one-year journey, where it will stay until May 2024, while Mercury and Uranus prepare for a long overdue meetup at 20 degrees of Taurus. Venus will still be in Gemini, but it will be preparing to move into Cancer, where it will join Mars and do a slow sort of dance with Mars, gaining speed, almost joining in alignment in Leo, which is really symbolizing this dance and this pull of energy we're experiencing internally between chasing and pursuing and using that yang, that masculine energy to go after what we want, what hustle culture has taught us to do for so long, versus learning to tap more into our attractive and receptive and heart-centered receiving energy, that yin, that traditionally feminine energy. We're called to find balance between the two, to know when to give it our all and when to sit back and relax. A good animal and example of this would be the lion. The lion isn't lazy, and just like the Leo, they know precisely when to recharge their batteries and when to turn it on for the crowd. Similarly, lions may rest in the sun most of the day, but when they have their eyes on a target, they never miss their mark. With Venus joining Mars, Venus, what we love and value, in Cancer, home, family, where Mars, our motivation, drive, and focus has already been, I do anticipate even more of a focus on the home front and providing resources for said home front and home security come May and even into early June. Here's a chart I've made of the upcoming lunar cycles. So the first line on the top was the previous full moon on April 6th. The one highlighted in yellow is the topic for today's video. Below that in blue is the next full moon. Full moons are in blue. The next new moon is highlighted in green. For those of you still with me, bless you. Thank you. I hope you like Excel spreadsheets as much as this past life Virgo. I did want to note here that Mars is at 13 degrees of Cancer during this mirror number 1212 new moon solar eclipse, so potentially we're being delivered some karma. Mars and Pluto are the two deliverers of karma, with Pluto being at 0 degrees and Mars being at 13 degrees. We have another lunar cycle on the horizon, the full moon in June, June 3rd, at 13 degrees of Sagittarius, that we should keep an eye out for. The square between Pluto and the nodes of destiny is building in intensity through May, June, and peaking in July. So right around these full and new moons, we can expect to see some more activity from Pluto. For those of you wondering how it may impact you, if you have anything located near where any of the aligned, opposite, or square boxes have placements, you'll feel this more significantly than the average person, but to get a personal detailed reading, you really need to work with an astrologer, determine your primary, at least your top 6 placements, and find where those fall. You want to pay close attention to your chart ruler. For example, as a Libra rising, my chart ruler is Venus. But with the sun rising in my first house in close conjunction to my ascendant, the sun also has a strong and powerful pull. You'll also want to see where you have any stelliums, concentrations of 3 or more placements, especially any of those that fall within a personal placement, especially the rising, north node, moon, sun, or Mercury. I have a few openings for chart readings coming up in May. Send me an email to the email address in the description for more information. Most importantly, we're honoring whatever me means to you. We're honoring that inner flame and fire. We're learning how to ignite that spark on our own and keep that fire burning, not only for ourselves, but for others. We'll be emerging from this new moon solar eclipse with a clearer idea of who we are and the unique gifts we have to offer and share with the world. So I get this question a lot. It's not always doom and gloom. It very much depends on where you are in your own consciousness and your own personal development, which is private and personal and between yourself and whatever therapeutic resources or outlets you see. If you're living in unconsciousness, I can tell you what you'll see, the difference. If you're living in unconsciousness, you'll see more reactivity, more turbulence, more violence, more polarization, and probably more denial. And you'll see repeating patterns, because the stronger one's denial is, the more likely they are. It's like running around a track. They're more likely to attract that same set of circumstances, but in a different person or a different workplace, whatever it is for you, and how your karmic lessons tend to be received or delivered. Those who are living with integrity and consciousness, they are aware that they were created in a divine image. That divine image is personal and none of my business, but they have a personal value system and align their behaviors with that personal value system that is based on some idea of higher consciousness. That is typically what you'll see with someone who is doing the work. They may be more on the spiritual side, or they might be invested in a particular religious faith. There are many different ways to practice one's spirituality and connection to the higher self. I challenge you to keep an open mind. So the question here is, in how quickly can we return to center? Center, the now, the present moment, that's the only power we really have. So whether you're living fully in unconsciousness or you're living with integrity and consciousness, there are going to be tests and curveballs that come up along the way. So if you're living with integrity and consciousness, those curveballs are simply tests to make sure that you've mastered the content. There's no need to take it any more personally or seriously than that. See it as the test it is. Thank the universe for the reminder and the lesson. Move on. For those that are still living in unconsciousness or enslaved to limiting thought patterns and belief systems, things that are keeping them small and blocking their ability to receive love and abundance, we may see an intensifying, especially as Pluto retrogrades into that 29th degree of Capricorn, an intensifying of the shadow of Capricorn. More power seeking, more exploitation of others. It may get very dramatic before ultimately exploding or imploding, so that we can see all the flaws and we're all aware of it. So then from the crumbles of that collapse, we can rebuild together and perhaps shift power back more equally among the people. See, I have a couple of journal prompts So 1, what old wounds or patterns are being tested, triggered, are being brought to the surface right now? And what can I do to consciously work through it? What change or transformation am I being encouraged to embrace right now? What new ways of being can I bring into form and make a reality by leading by example? And what toxic habits, behaviors, thoughts, relationships, or people might be blocking me from attracting abundance? Thank you for tuning in. Thank you also for liking, commenting, and subscribing so that we can create a collaborative community of cosmic creators. Let's see how quickly we can grow this community to 100 subscribers, maybe even 1,000. Make sure as you're following along to drop a comment with anything that resonates, anything that stands out to you, and most importantly, your placements. I love getting to know you and your placements and learning more about the placements themselves through your awesome energy. Thank you.